When my Aunt Cordelia looked me dead in the eye at a family gathering and said I was too poor to matter, I just smiled and nodded like I always did. But what she didn't know was that in just a few weeks, I'd be sitting across from her in a lawyer's office watching her face turn ghost white as she realized everything she thought she deserved was actually mine. You won't believe how sweet this revenge turned out to be, but first, let me tell you how years of her cruelty almost broke me completely. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Melody and I'm 26 years old. 2 years ago, I thought I knew exactly where I stood in my family. I was the poor niece, the one who needed help, the burden that everyone tolerated but nobody really wanted around. At least, that's what my Aunt Cordelia made sure I believed every single day. You see, I lost my parents in a car accident when I was 8, and my grandmother Evelyn raised me in her small but loving home. Grandma wasn't wealthy by any means, but she gave me everything she could. She put me through college, cheered at my graduation, and when I earned my master's degree in literature, she was so proud she cried. But when she passed away 2 years ago, I felt truly alone in the world for the first time. That's when Cordelia really showed her true colors. The very first sign should have been at Grandma's funeral. While I was still crying at the graveside, trying to process that the only person who truly loved me was gone, Cordelia walked up behind me in her expensive black dress and designer heels. She placed what I thought was a comforting hand on my shoulder, but then she leaned in close and whispered, "Well, at least now you'll learn what the real world is like without Evelyn coddling you." I was so shocked and heartbroken that I convinced myself I must have misheard her. Surely no one would say something so cruel at a funeral. But looking back now, that moment was Cordelia drawing her battle lines. Cordelia had married my Uncle Vincent 15 years earlier, and with him came wealth, status, and a mansion in the best part of town. She lived for charity galas, country club luncheons, and making sure everyone knew she belonged in high society. The problem was, I reminded her of where the family actually came from, humble beginnings and genuine love over money and appearances. The first family gathering after the funeral was Thanksgiving, about 3 months later. I was still struggling with grief and had just started working as a junior librarian, barely making ends meet. But I was so desperate to feel connected to family that I spent my entire grocery budget on ingredients to make Grandma's famous apple pie recipe. I thought maybe sharing something that meant so much to our family would help me feel less alone. When I arrived at Cordelia's mansion carrying my carefully prepared pie, she took one look at me and sighed dramatically. "Oh honey," she said loud enough for Uncle Vincent and their friends to hear, "we really should go shopping sometime. I can't bear seeing you in that." She gestured at my thrift store dress like it was personally offensive to her. But it got worse. When dinner was served, Cordelia directed me to sit at a small side table she'd set up. "I thought you'd be more comfortable here," she said with a fake smile. It was literally a children's table, even though there were no children present. Just me sitting alone while the adults, including Uncle Vincent who said nothing, enjoyed their meal at the main dining table. When I tried to present my pie for dessert, Cordelia waved it away dismissively. "How quaint. We have a professional caterer handling dessert tonight, but I suppose we can find room for your little contribution in the kitchen." She handed it to the housekeeper without even looking at it. I watched through the kitchen doorway as it went straight into the garbage. I told myself she was just stressed about hosting. People say things they don't mean when they're overwhelmed, right? The pattern continued at her birthday party 2 months later. I had saved for weeks to buy her a beautiful vintage book of poetry, first edition, leather-bound, something I thought she'd appreciate. When she opened it in front of all her society friends, she held it up like it was contaminated. "A used book? How practical. I suppose not everyone can afford Tiffany." The room went silent, and I wanted to disappear into the floor, but then she made it worse by putting me to work. While her guests mingled and laughed, she had me serving drinks and collecting plates. When people asked who I was, she'd introduce me as Vincent's poor niece, the one I was telling you about. The way she said poor wasn't about money, it was about worth. About how little I mattered in her perfect world. The breaking point started building when I lost my library job due to budget cuts. I was desperate and swallowed my pride to ask Cordelia if she knew of any opportunities. Her response still echoes in my head, "Darling, the people in my circle wouldn't know what to do with someone of your background. Perhaps try the local grocery store?" For months, I made excuses for her behavior. I told myself she was just particular about appearances, that she didn't mean to be cruel, that maybe if I just tried harder to fit into her world, she'd accept me. I was so desperate for family connection that I convinced myself her cruelty was somehow my fault. But then I discovered something that changed everything. My cousin Jasper, Cordelia's stepson who had always been kind to me, accidentally let slip the truth. Cordelia hadn't just been passively unhelpful with my job search, she had been actively sabotaging it. She'd been calling potential employers, introducing herself as a family reference, and then subtly suggesting I might not be reliable or a good cultural fit. As I sat in my tiny apartment that night, behind on rent and eating ramen noodles for the third day straight, I finally saw Cordelia clearly for the first time. She wasn't just neglecting to help me, she was deliberately keeping me down so she could feel superior. And I had been letting her do it, making excuses for her, enabling my own destruction. That was the night everything changed. But I had no idea that Grandma had already set a plan in motion that would turn Cordelia's world completely upside down. The final blow came 6 months later, and honestly, I should have seen it coming. But I was still that naive girl who believed family meant something even when that family treated me like dirt. I had finally managed to land a part-time job at a small independent bookstore downtown. The pay wasn't much, but after months of rejections thanks to Cordelia's sabotage, it felt like winning the lottery. I was starting to rebuild my confidence, making friends with my coworkers, and for the first time since Grandma died, I felt a spark of hope. That's when Cordelia called me with what seemed like an olive branch. "Melody, darling," she purred through the phone, "I've been thinking about our relationship, and I want to make things right. There's a charity gala next weekend for the Children's Literacy Foundation, and I'd love for you to be my guest. It would be perfect for you to network with some influential people." I was so desperate to believe she actually cared that I ignored every red flag. This was my chance to finally be accepted, to be part of the family properly. I spent my entire first paycheck, every single dollar, on a decent black dress and a pair of heels that didn't come from a thrift store. I even got my hair done at a real salon. Looking in the mirror that night, I felt beautiful for the first time in years. The gala was held at the most exclusive hotel in the city. When I arrived, Cordelia was holding court with the charity board members, looking absolutely radiant in a designer gown that probably cost more than my rent. She spotted me and waved me over with what seemed like genuine warmth. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my husband's niece, Melody," she announced to the group of elegant women. "She's the one I've been mentoring through some challenging times." My heart soared. Finally, she was acknowledging me as family, claiming me publicly. But then she kept talking. "Melody's been having such a difficult time finding stable employment," she continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Her grandmother spoiled her terribly, never taught her the value of real hard work. That's why she's struggling so much now to make her way in the world." The women around us made sympathetic noises, but I could see it in their eyes. They were looking at me like I was a charity case. One woman discreetly slipped me her business card, whispering, "I might have some house cleaning work if you're interested." Another offered to bring me some gently used professional clothes from her closet. But Cordelia wasn't finished destroying me yet. She insisted I give a speech to the entire gala about overcoming adversity and the importance of literacy programs for underprivileged youth. Standing at that podium, looking out at 200 of the city's elite while Cordelia beamed like a proud mentor, I realized with horrifying clarity what was happening. She wasn't helping me network, she was using my pain as entertainment for her social circle. I was her pet project, her proof of charitable work, her way to score points with the other society wives. I somehow made it through the speech without breaking down, but the moment I stepped off that stage, I headed straight for the bathroom. Locked in a stall, I finally let myself fall apart completely. The fake smiles, the condescending sympathy, the way Cordelia had turned my grief and struggles into a performance for her benefit, it all crashed over me at once. But in that bathroom stall, something shifted inside me. For the first time in 2 years, I stopped making excuses for her behavior. She wasn't stressed or particular or overwhelmed. She was cruel, deliberately, calculatedly cruel, and I had been enabling it by accepting it, by showing up, by hoping she would change. Grandma would have been horrified if she knew how I was being treated. She raised me to believe I had worth, that I deserved respect and love. What would she think of me now, letting Cordelia use me as a prop for her social climbing? I made a decision right there in that hotel bathroom. I was done. Done with family gatherings where I was humiliated. Done with hoping for acceptance that would never come. done with being Cordelia's punching bag. I walked out of that gala with my head held high for the first time in months. Over the next 6 months, I completely cut contact with Cordelia and Vincent. When she called leaving guilt trip voicemails, "I don't understand why you're being so dramatic," and "family is family, Melody, you can't just abandon us," I deleted them without listening to the end. When she sent Vincent to check on me, I politely but firmly told him I was building a life that didn't include people who treated me poorly. And you know what? My life actually got better. Without Cordelia's constant criticism poisoning my thoughts, I threw myself into my work at the bookstore. I got promoted to assistant manager. I found a cozy apartment that I could actually afford. I started seeing a therapist who helped me understand that what I'd experienced was emotional abuse, not just family quirks. I made real friends, people who appreciated my kindness instead of exploiting it. For the first time since Grandma died, I was genuinely happy. I was building something that was mine, something Cordelia couldn't touch or ruin. That's why I almost didn't answer the phone when an unknown number called on a Tuesday afternoon in March. The voice on the other end was professional, polite. "Miss Chen? This is Harrison Webb from Webb and Associates. I need you to attend a will reading this Friday at 2 p.m. "I think you have the wrong person," I told him. "All our family legal matters are handled through my aunt." "No, Miss Chen," he said firmly. "This specifically concerns you. There are some surprising provisions that require your presence." I hung up completely confused. What will? What provisions? I assumed maybe some distant relative had left me a small keepsake or something. I almost didn't go. I had plans with friends that afternoon, and honestly, I was done with anything that might reconnect me to Cordelia's drama. But curiosity won out. And thank God it did, because I was about to discover that Grandma had been playing a much longer game than any of us realized. Walking into Harrison Webb's law office that Friday afternoon, I never expected my life to change forever. But there I was, face to face with the three people I'd been avoiding for months: Cordelia, Vincent, and my cousin Jasper. Cordelia barely glanced at me when I entered, which was actually a relief. She was dressed to the nines in a black designer suit, checking her manicured nails like she was bored by the whole proceeding. Vincent sat beside her looking uncomfortable as usual, while Jasper gave me a small, sympathetic smile. "I'm surprised you bothered showing up," Cordelia muttered without looking up. "Though I suppose you're hoping for some small trinket to remember the family by." I took a seat across the room, my heart racing. What was this about? Mr. Webb shuffled through papers at his mahogany desk, clearing his throat importantly. "We're here today to read the last will and testament of Evelyn Chen," he announced. My blood ran cold. "But we already did this 2 years ago," I stammered. "That was the preliminary will," Mr. Webb explained. "This is Mrs. Chen's final will, updated and sealed just 1 week before her passing." Cordelia perked up immediately. "Updated? What do you mean updated?" Mr. Webb adjusted his glasses and began reading. As he spoke, my world shifted on its axis. Grandma hadn't just owned her little house like we all believed. She'd been quietly buying rental properties and making investments for years. The total estate was worth $2.3 million. Cordelia's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She straightened in her chair, whispering excitedly to Vincent. "I knew Mother Evelyn appreciated everything I did for this family. I organized all her medical appointments, made sure she was comfortable in her final years." My stomach twisted. The lies just rolled off her tongue so easily. Mr. Webb continued reading the smaller bequests. Vincent received $10,000. Jasper inherited Grandma's jewelry collection. Then came Cordelia's inheritance, the china set. "That's it?" Cordelia interrupted sharply. "There must be more. What about the properties? The investments?" Mr. Webb looked directly at me. "The remainder of the estate, including all properties, investments, and liquid assets, totaling approximately $2.1 million, goes to my beloved granddaughter, Melody Chen." The silence that followed was deafening. I couldn't breathe. Cordelia's face went through about 5 different expressions before settling on pure rage. "This is impossible," she exploded, jumping to her feet. "That girl has done nothing for this family. I was the one who took care of Evelyn. I organized her medical care, visited her every week." "Actually," Mr. Webb said calmly, producing a sealed envelope, "Mrs. Chen left specific instructions for me to read this letter aloud in the event of any objections." He opened it and began reading in Grandma's voice, words I'd never heard but recognized as completely her. "My dearest Melody, if you're hearing this, then my plan has worked perfectly. I've watched Cordelia treat you with cruelty and disdain for years, always believing she was entitled to everything simply because she married into money. She never understood that true worth comes from character, not bank accounts. Tears started streaming down my face. Even from beyond the grave, Grandma was protecting me. I've been quietly building this estate for you, my darling girl. Every rental property, every investment, was purchased with your future in mind. Cordelia thought I was just a simple old woman, but I was ensuring you would never again have to endure being called too poor to matter. Cordelia's face turned absolutely white. Those were her exact words from the gala. The money comes with only one condition: you owe no explanations, no apologies, and no charity to those who showed you none. Live beautifully, love deeply, and remember that you were always worthy, you just needed the world to catch up. Cordelia was frantically shaking her head. She can't handle that kind of money. She'll waste it all. This is insane. When that didn't work, she switched to guilt melody. You have to think about family responsibility. We should share this. After all, Vincent is her son-in-law. But I wasn't that broken girl anymore. 6 months of therapy and genuine friendships had rebuilt my backbone. I stood up slowly, looking Cordelia directly in the eye for the first time in years. "And Cordelia," I said quietly, my voice steady and strong, "you spent years telling me I was too poor to matter." Grandma apparently disagreed. She saw my worth even when you couldn't. I picked up my purse and headed toward the door. "I won't be sharing this inheritance, but I will be sharing something else, the truth about how you've treated me. Consider this our final conversation." As I reached the doorway, I turned back one last time. Cordelia was slumped in her chair, the reality finally sinking in that her cruelty had cost her everything she thought she deserved. "Oh, and Cordelia, that charity gala where you humiliated me? I'll be making a very generous donation to their literacy program next year. In Grandma Evelyn's name, of course." I smiled sweetly. I'm sure she'd appreciate the irony. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter than I had in years. Grandma had given me more than money, she'd given me validation, justice, and the ultimate proof that kindness and character matter more than cruelty and status. The girl who was too poor to matter was finally free. So there you have it. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up teaching us exactly how strong we really are. Grandma's plan wasn't just about the money, it was about showing me my own worth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more incredible revenge stories, and let me know in the comments what you would have done in my situation.